Niners, Tre'Vius, Hodges-Tomlinson. Some Hall of Fame pedigree in the 49ers mock drafts recently, and a ESPN 7-round mock that, I don't know, not feeling it at all. Another 3rd-round running back for the 49ers? Come on, here we go on this episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
To Locked On 49ers, Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks to everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Going live here. Appreciate all the folks that are here already with us live today. Croc, I got to say, when's the last time you did a mock draft? Because I remember doing a mock draft last year, and I haven't done a full mock draft this year in the first round, or just for one round. And I have done a 7-round just 49ers mock draft. But Jordan Reed of ESPN, and he's a friend of the program. Love Jordan and love his stuff. Didn't love his mock draft for the 49ers here, but I can't imagine putting together a 7-round every team mock draft. Like, that's just asinine, because I spent so much time on just a 1-round mock draft. I can't imagine how long you would spend on a 7-round mock draft.
Hey, man, that's why Jordan Reed's getting paid the big bucks over there with ESPN, because there's a lot of work that goes into that, a lot of film study, a lot of talking to different people. Jordan goes into a lot of stuff as well. So, yeah, good. Kudos to him for doing that. I'm cool on every team 7-round mock draft.
It's crazy. It's crazy. We'll get into the 7-round mock draft from Jordan Reed of ESPN and some interesting picks for the 49ers. Some players we've talked about on this podcast before. Some players we have not huge scouting reports on all of the guys, but we do have some insight on some of them. And I want to start with, though, a prospect you have watched, Croc, and you're our cornerback expert, Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson. Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, the nephew, I think he's the nephew, right, of LaDainian Tomlinson. And,
he's kin to him. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved me some LaDainian Tomlinson back in the day. Probably one of the more underrated players as far as running backs go in NFL history. Like, he might be actually the best one ever. Like, he deserves to be in that conversation. Not often talked about in that conversation because of what he could do. Top speed, his balance, he had a little power, even though he wasn't the biggest guy. He was big enough, and he was strong, and he was built low to the ground. Top speed, and such an amazing receiver of the football as well. Just a complete player, and he would go berserk on the league this day and age. And his nephew, Trey Hodges-Tomlinson, has been in a few mock drafts for the 49ers. A player you've watched, and a player I wanted to highlight today because I think that late 3rd-round area might be right for him. And I see him in a lot of mock drafts in that zone. So what do you think about Trey Hodges-Tomlinson? Do you think he could potentially be a future 49er?
So he had his pro day today. All right. But, and I have his numbers on there. We'll talk about those numbers. But first, let's talk about just kind of what I've seen on film so far from him. And if you want a feisty, twitched up defensive back out of TCU, kind of a la Jason Verrett, right? And I'm not saying he's going to be Jason Verrett as a prospect, but just that kind of ability, right? Like, just twitched up, change of direction is really good, got the hips, got the feet, then he's that guy. He's scrappy. I like how he plays coverage. There was one play, and again, when you're identifying guys for Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers and how they identify some of these players, there has to be a certain level of physicality. And I'm watching the film, and he has 2 guys run at him, and he just blows up one guy, goes around him, and knifes him there and makes a tackle for a loss on the screenplay at the line of scrimmage. Like, those are the things I think that are going to jump off the screen to guys like the 49ers and what they're looking for in their defensive backs. He has really good long speed. It doesn't look like he's struggling to keep up with guys vertically down the field. If there's an issue, all right, it's probably going to be lack of size. All right, so kind of like LaDainian Tomlinson, Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson is a little vertically challenged. We're talking about a cornerback, and he played all outside for TCU. Only 5'8", weighed in at 178 pounds. Didn't have a whole bunch of bench press reps, 12 bench press reps. All right, but he tested very well in the 40-yard dash, ran a 4.42. Vertical jump 39 inches, broad jump very well. So he has like elite athleticism, but he's just not big. So to me, it kind of takes me back to a guy like DJ Reed, right? Wait, DJ Reed? Yeah, DJ Reed for the 49ers.
Yeah, former 49er, current New York Jet, right?
New York Jet got paid, right? Where he's not the biggest of guys, but the 49ers drafted him and they're like, oh man, like, well, he's not big, so we're going to put him in the slot. We're going to play him at safety. They're moving him at all these other positions, but the position that he ultimately got paid to play was outside cornerback. Well, he's a good coverage guy. He can run, he can jump, he makes plays on the ball, does all those things very well. And when you watch Tre'Vius Hodges, he has some of that same type of style where you're short arms, 29-inch arms. Like, that is not good. And I think some things like that is why he will slip a little bit, but he's a legit outside cornerback. So if you were telling me you want to play him on the outside or maybe even try him in the slot, I do think that he's a guy that I would like to see on the 49ers. Now the other part of this is you just drafted Samuel Womack, and he's kind of the opposite, or not even the opposite, but ran faster, longer arms, right? But still kind of, 5'8", 5'9", looks tall. We talked about that. And now it's like, well, if you draft Hodges in the third round, are you going to automatically put him over a guy like Womack, who you likely want to develop? Or about Lenore? Is he going to go back to the nickel or outside? So that's the interesting part, right? When it comes to like roster building, what do you do with a guy like that when you draft him in the third round? Because ideally you want him to be on the field.
And it's the first thing that pops out when you look at Hodges-Tomlinson is the size. It's like, okay, well, he's not big. So now you start talking about pigeonholing. And by the way, Sam Womack wasn't big either, but like 5'9", 190 or whatever he was, like he would look like Shaquille O'Neal next to 5'8", 178. Like that's small. That's going to be probably disqualifying for some teams. Just to say, hey, this guy's 5'8", 178. And there'll be a GM, it's been around a long time, will say, he is not on our draft board. We don't draft 5'8".
In the arm length.
We don't do it. And
like 29-inch arms compared to what Womack had. Womack had really long arms. When we watched Womack, and I don't know if it was because he had number 0 on, but Womack looked tall on the field because of how long his arms were.
Yeah, and it helped him play a little bit bigger. And I like the physicality from Hodges-Tomlinson. If anybody's watching on YouTube right now, and you are if you're watching this live. So I'm a taller guy. I'm 6'4". I've got long arms. I have not measured what my arms are, but I'm sure they're pretty decent length as far as the NFL scouting terms go. 29 inches is like right here, just past my elbow. That's small. It's short. It's not quite that short, but 29 inches is about as short, like 5'8", 178 pounds, 29-inch arms, about as small of an NFL football player as you're going to find.
Now, that was the issue as well with the kid out of Roger McCreary out of Auburn. He had the really short arms, and he still went top of the second round. But I want to say that they played him more in the nickel than on the outside. So a lot of times that's what happens.
So the other thing is,
I just think that if you can cover, you can cover, though.
Yeah, like, so that's what I was going to say.
Arm length, yeah.
Would we be, and I know teams will, and I know the scouting community is going to knock him for his size, and I understand that. You're not going to draft him in the first round at that size. If he was 5'10", maybe he would be a first-round pick, because when you see his athleticism, you see him break on the ball, you see him tackle, like he can play, and he's a baller, and he's not afraid to mix it up despite his size, right? So is it unfair to say, because the first thing I saw, because I saw him playing more on the outside, I think, oh, like he looks like that cover 2 corner, right? Who is really good at coming up against the run, stays on the outside, but he's got long speed too to run with guys. He's not like Rondé Barber, where he's not that fast either to play that classic cover 2 corner. Or you're saying, okay, well, he's 5'8", so he has to play in the slot. Is it unfair to pigeonhole him in some role like that just because of his size? You think it's unfair, or do you think he can play traditional outside corner? I think we might have lost.
Okay, do you have me back?
You with us? Yeah.
Asante Samuel Jr., he was a guy, and I'm looking at his arm length, 29.50. So similar arm length there. People were clamoring to have him be drafted in the second round. And he came out and did well for Los Angeles Chargers as a rookie.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I love everything I've seen about Hodges-Tomlinson on tape. His closing ability is like instant. He's not afraid to mix it up against the run. Is he going to come back to haunt him? Is he going to be like, okay, you've got the technique, you're there, but you're 5'8" with short arms, and so a bigger receiver is just going to catch the ball over you, and so that's what teams are going to have to answer. Interesting late third. Here's one more question I have for you, Croc, and maybe we'll get to this here on the other side in a second, but I will tease this question to you, Croc, about the 49ers. Do you think the 49ers would, based on their history of drafting, would go for a player that doesn't meet their criteria size-wise? So think on that a little bit, because of what we've seen from the 49ers through round 3, traditionally, through round 3 I'm talking about, not into day 3. They've really tried to hit height, weight, speed in those rounds. I want to talk to you about that next, plus Jordan Reed of ESPN's 7-round 49ers mock draft and another running back in round 3. Could it be? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by Built Bar. It's Built March Madness time. The bracket is here. Just one more day here to vote for your favorite bar or puff. So make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. I'll be voting for that peanut butter flavor, peanut butter brownie specifically. I mean, it's just a travesty that the old school just peanut butter flavor didn't make it into the bracket. But you can bet for your favorite bar or puff. Croc's going to be Team Puff all the way. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, one lucky Locked On listener will get a 12-month subscription to Built Bars and have your favorite Built bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. Built is the best protein bar ever, period. They're amazing. Most Built bars covered in 100% real chocolate. I don't know how they make them taste so good. I don't know how they put these amazing flavors together, some really awesome seasonal flavors and some of the classics as well. So make your vote count. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. And you can vote every day in March. So hop on in. Not much time left to support your pick. All right, Croc. So gave you a minute to think about it there. Just looking back at the 49ers drafts, and look, to be honest with you, aside from Fred Warner, they've been great in the third round area anyway, especially with these late third rounders, but they've tried to hit height, weight, speed guys. And so I don't know if 5'8", 178 is something the 49ers would do. And I don't know on the other side of things for a bigger prospect. You're looking at Jordan Reed's mock draft, a player we've already talked about here on the podcast, and Jalen Jones, Texas A&M cornerback, who meets the size requirements, but 4.57, he's not the fastest guy. I don't know if he would be someone the 49ers would be interested in, because late third, we've seen the 49ers make multiple picks now in that area, and they've kind of swung for the fences on athletes. Hasn't really worked out great, but I think their MO is in day 2. They're trying to hit. They're trying to hit prototypes with a size, with a height, weight, speed metrics.
Yeah, I think even like Deebo Samuel, right? Wasn't his? I think his 3-cone and stuff was like good. It wasn't like great, but I think that's what they identified with that. Let's see, Dante Pettis, very similar as well.
Crazy
right?
3-cone,
good change
right?
of direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was tall. He wasn't the biggest guy, but he had, he was 6'1", so he wasn't small necessarily, even though he was kind of skinny. You look at Tre'Vius Ward, right? That was all projection, height, weight, speed. Ambry Thomas, similarly, 6 feet. He ran really good times.
Ran in the 4.3s.
Yeah, Ty Davis Price, obviously size-wise, and ran well. Same with the running back the year before. They're looking for size there, especially the size. Now that I think about it, length and size. Aaron Banks, Fred Warner, clearly is the big hit they made in the third round. They've really aimed for that. So I wonder if someone like Hodges-Tomlinson would be disqualified from the 49ers, because that's their MO. I don't know.
Man, and teams are like that. Like if they have like these hard nose on certain guys, and it might be arm length or it might be height for them, but gosh, you just pass over just good football players that way. And now they might like the football player, but hey, we'll just take them later. Maybe like DJ Reed. Maybe DJ Reed was a guy who they identified as someone that they would like to draft, but it's just like, hey, we're not going to use a day 2 pick on you. So then he's
Ahkello Witherspoon. Ahkello Witherspoon was the one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
tons of length and speed there.
Right. He ran a 4.45 with like a bad arm or something like that. So
So interesting. I
yeah,
like Hodges-Tomlinson, but you're cool. You stamp him with that late third round pick 99 approval.
I like him. I would take him there. Because I mean, at that point, especially late third, I mean, we're essentially talking about a 4th-round pick.
Right. Yeah. You're talking about right around pick 100. You're not getting even what you would consider a third round player at that point in the draft. So get yourself some good football players. Maybe that's where the 49ers need to learn from themselves from their success on day 3, where guys like Brock Purdy and Dre Greenlaw, he didn't meet a size standard for them, right? But he was a really good 5th round pick. Talanoa Hufanga didn't meet the speed standard, but he's a really good player and a really good pick. So maybe they need to get away with that and stop trying, near pick 100 to hit on everything height, weight, speed. Maybe they need to get rid of that and stop worrying about that and just pick the best football players.
Right.
Start picking like they're picking in round 5 in round 3.
Right. That's what I would suggest to them. Just take good football players. And again, we're talking about Tre'Vius Hodges-Tomlinson a lot. And again, I continue to kind of look at Asante Samuel Jr. A lot of 49er fans wanted Asante Samuel Jr. A lot, right? In the 2nd round as well. Like they wanted him over Aaron Banks. And 5'9", ran in the 4.5s, 29-inch arm length. So it's like, if you're just kind of matching player for player, I would say Hodges-Tomlinson probably might have like some of the edge in some of those things. So if you liked Asante Samuel, then you should love Hodges-Tomlinson.
And there's gonna be scouts that love him, love the way he plays, and you could tell Croc. And I don't know anything about Trey Hodges-Tomlinson. I don't know how his personality or anything, but knowing LT and then seeing the way he plays, I would have to think that folks around the TCU program probably like Hodges-Tomlinson quite a bit. Like he seems like one of those guys who be like, hey, don't worry about the size. This guy's a baller. I bet that you get a lot of those reports coming out of there. That's just judging by the way he plays. I don't know him at all.
Right. And to be honest, and obviously I was like a bigger corner. Like, dude, I envied the guys that were 5'8", 5'9". They just moved so much naturally better. And like, unless you're talking about like a special big guy, right? Like a Jalen Ramsey or something like that. But most like just bigger corners don't move as well as the 5'8" guys. Like I envied that about them. The change of direction, the quick twitch, like the feet, the suddenness. So like these scouts and stuff that maybe never even played ball or played the cornerback position, they don't understand. Like, dude, you're passing over something. I wish I was like these guys or move like them. And they're like, nah, arms aren't long enough. Like, hey, can they cover? That's all that matters.
Yeah, it doesn't matter
like
if your
we see the 6'2", 6'3" guys get dunked on all the time.
Right, and
that's somebody posted a picture of me getting dunked on Twitter from a receiver. I was listed at 6'2". Like,
I saw that. It's the only photo they could find of you from Jets camp is getting dunked on by who was it? KJ Osborne? Is that who it was?
KJ Stroud. KJ Stroud.
Yeah.
There's like, bro, there's way more pictures. Come on, man. They got to do me a little bit. I'm like, come on, that's the picture out of all the pictures, that one. But like we see the big guys get jumped over all the time. So at the end of the day, like, can you play corner? So when I was with the Jets, one of the best coverage guys, right, was Isaiah Trufant. 5 foot, I kid you not, maybe 5'6", maybe. He listed at like 5'8", but I think like legit NFL, which he bounced around different leagues, so he probably never got like his official measurement somewhere. Like he probably didn't do like a combine or anything. But if they got his official measurement, 5'6", 155 pounds. I kid you not.
What?
Smallest DB I've ever seen. But dude was scrappy, and he would go up against Stephen Hill, who's 6'4", and lock Stephen Hill up. Like, so it's like if Stephen Hill is 6'4", and 5'6", 6'4". Right. So like, again, to me can you cover? Because some people just got that dog in them. Truth, I had that dog in them.
Oh, Stephen Hill. I remember Stephen Hill. He's one of my draft crushes way back in the day. 6'4", ran 4.3s out of Georgia Tech. I was like, oh, this guy's like budget. He's like budget Calvin Johnson out of Georgia Tech. But no, he wasn't a baller.
Yeah, nah, not at all.
And so like 29-inch arms, it's like, okay, not ideal, right? But if you're 6'2" and you got 33-inch arms, but you're more than 4 inches away from the receiver, what does it matter? We're talking math.
I wonder if there's some analytical numbers out there that say this happens to guys that have this arm length more than this guy. Because for me, as someone that just watches football, I see it happen just as much to the long arm guys as it does to the short guys. I see zero difference. Now, there might be a play where you could be like, man, it helped to have that extra 2 inches of arm length, maybe. But for the most part, on a consistent basis, I don't know how much it helps you to have a little bit longer arms.
It's really hard. There's so many GMs, and I hear GMs talk about it all the time. Former GMs talking about it, current GMs talking about it, and they don't even put guys on their draft board. They're like, you don't meet the requirements that we're looking for. Sorry, maybe another team will draft you, but we will not draft 5'8", 178 with 29-inch arms. We will not.
There has to be something analytically about it. And I did see, I see Thomas Brown. He says was Isaiah Trufant related to Marcus Trufant. Yeah, there are brothers. There are 3 of them in the NFL. Yep. And Isaiah, scrappy guy. He was played in the UFL. Was defensive player of the year in the UFL. Just tiny guy. Played in the Arena Football League. Really worked his way up. But again, I've just seen enough shorter armed, short DBs to realize they just play well. There might be a guy if you're talking about getting boxed out by the tight end from the Raiders, Darren Waller, right? Then okay, yeah, you're going to be at a disadvantage on a jump ball. But for the most part, and we're talking about on a play-to-play basis, it doesn't hinder you as much as I think people think, being shorter with shorter arms.
Well, look, there's another diminutive prospect here that we're going to talk about when it comes to the latest ESPN 7-round mock draft for the San Francisco 49ers next. We're not going to get super in-depth with all of the prospects here, but a 3rd-round running back, an interesting player, but could the 49ers go back to the well and draft another running back with one of their top picks there in the 3rd round in the 2023 NFL draft? And a few more thoughts on the latest from Jordan Reed of ESPN next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The tournament is heating up, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then wager on everything: money line, point spreads, which team will cut down the nets. Got NBA basketball getting close to the playoffs, NHL hockey getting close to the playoffs, Major League Baseball opening day today, Thursday. I've got my Buster Hug shirt on right now. Don't love the San Francisco Giants lineup though on opening day. It might be a rough year for San Francisco baseball fans, but all on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet for or against any team you want. And of course, draft props, my favorite thing to bet on all year long. So don't miss your shot at a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join your FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. All right, Croc, we talked already about the guy that was mocked to the 49ers first here in this latest ESPN 7-round mock draft, courtesy of Jordan Reed. Love Jordan Reed's stuff, doing fantastic work there at ESPN. Jalen Jones, cornerback out of Texas A&M, 6'2", 200 pounds, long corner, ran 4.57. I saw a day 3 safety when I looked at his tape, and I think this is a little too high for him. I like the player, but again, I'm not sure if the 49ers need the speed and size aspect. I don't know if Hodges-Tomlinson or Jalen Jones is a fit for the 49ers here, but maybe they're gonna start to rethink the way they do things at the end of the 3rd round. But Jalen Jones, to me, day 3 guy. I like him at safety, but there's definitely a lot to like there about Jalen Jones.
It's funny because you talked about the speed, right? And without me knowing what his 40-yard dash was, one of the first things I say is long speed, ?
Mm-hmm.
I think we got our answer.
Yeah. And so it's hard to draft a corner day 2 if you're worried about his speed. I think is the easiest way to break down that prospect. And you go back to last week's episode where we talked a little bit more about Jalen Jones to get more of the scouting report there. We have talked a little bit about Nick Saldiveri offensive tackle from Old Dominion, a prospect I really like. I think it's a perfect fit, and I think this is the perfect area for Nick Saldiveri to go in here late in the third round. And there's some different offensive tackles that have been thrown around for the 49ers in this range. And tell me if this has happened to you, Croc. So when we look at these mock drafts and start looking at players, when I see a player that I really like, my thought is, man, this guy's way too good. No way he falls to pick 99. Right. And I kind of feel like that about Blake Freeland just because of his size, his athleticism. I liked his tape. He's a common pick for the 49ers. I think it's much more likely just because of the small school nature of Nick Saldiveri as a prospect, 6'6", 318 pounds. I think it's more likely that he's here in this area. So Nick Saldiveri is probably one of my favorite prospects for the 49ers because I think it's likely that he could be going in this area. And I think he's worth a pick here around 100. 101 is the mock pick for Nick Saldiveri out of Old Dominion. And, he's got athleticism. He's got position versatility. He could stick at offensive tackle in the NFL. He played even some center at the Senior Bowl, played really well at the Senior Bowl. Still looked more like an offensive tackle playing center. To my eye, I'm not a trained offensive lineman at all. I've looked at a lot of offensive linemen over the years as it pertains to the NFL draft. So I kind of know what I'm looking at, but it's not my specialty. But so I think it might take some work, but could be definitely a swing player and a guy that could start potentially in the NFL at multiple positions because I think he does have the requisite skills to be a starting player, whether it's at center or even potentially at right tackle. So I love this pick for the 49ers. But back to my point a second ago, Croc, does this happen to you where you either look at like almost every prospect I look at in this late third round range? It's like the Niners have made this so difficult for us when you have to cut out 100 prospects, and I see a prospect I really like, and that makes me think, oh, no way this guy falls to pick 99. And then I'll see another player, and I think, well, this guy's garbage. This is way too high for him, Yeah. So it's like I've seen so many of those. There's very few players. I think Nick Saldiveri really fits one of those players where I think, okay, this actually kind of fits where this is the right range for him and a player I also like.
I think that kind of reminds me of like Abraham Lucas. He was a guy when I was watching, I'm like, this feels more like an early day two guy. And then he ended up getting drafted like at the top of the third round. So I think some of these guys kind of slide a little bit. And 49ers, they got like 11 picks in this draft. They will not be selecting 11 players. So what are you going to do, man? We're going to move around a little bit, move some of these picks. Well, I think we said that they're like 100% on trading up at some point, and then last year they broke all the rules. I think they picked at their original slots with every pick last year, right?
They always trade. Last year they didn't. It seemed the most likely time to trade when you had all these picks. This year feels exactly the same. And John Lynch says, I don't know if we want to have a higher pick. I'm like, that sounds kind of like what an insane person would say. You don't want to pick higher and have an opportunity to draft another player ahead of pick 99, but I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see what the 49ers do, but I feel the same I did last year going into it. Seems like a prime spot for the 49ers to move up in round 3 to make sure they secure their favorite player that could be sliding in round 3.
If you, and this is for you, gun to your head, what position would you take if you had to trade up for a guy? Because a lot of people would say 49ers should trade, or they should pick this position first. And I'm always like, man, just take best player available. Like, don't focus so much on the position.
The thing is, it would be offensive tackle most likely, and I think offensive tackle is really good in this class. I think it's a deep corner class. I think those are the most likely positions the 49ers attack, just because I think need and value could come together for the 49ers at corner or safety or offensive line, specifically potentially someone that could play offensive tackle. And it's a lot of good interior offensive linemen in that late third round range. I think it's just the most likely to happen. But if there's a player at another position that you have a top 50 grade on and he starts to slip and he's there at pick 85, pick 89, you're like, oh, dude, this guy's just the best player on our board by a lot, like in another tier, then go get that player, even if he's not at that one specific position.
Right. And I agree with that sentiment.
Yeah, and who knows who that player would even be potentially in this class. And it's hard enough to predict what the 49ers draft board might look like if they were picking in the first round, let alone at pick 99.
Here's the tough thing, right? Because I see a lot of edge or offensive tackle, and my issue with that is typically like good edges and offensive tackles don't go late like this. It's just very
Right.
rare.
That's the thing. That's why I think because Blake Freeland gets mocked to the 49ers a lot. And I think a lot of 49ers fans have seen it, and a lot of, content creators and folks and scouts and draft nicks have talked about Blake Freeland and gotten 49ers fans sort of excited about him. It's like, I don't think there's any way he falls to pick 99. I think it's more like, I think it's probably, to be honest with you, I think it's more likely he goes at the end of round 1 than he falls to pick 99.
Yeah, I think Max Crosby coming out of Eastern Michigan. He's like, in the 4th round. So, oh man, like you got one of the best edge rushers in the league, but like that's very rare.
But you need a reason for that, and that it's the small school thing. And that's why Nick Saldiveri, I think, fits, because Old Dominion. There's an extra layer. It's like, so when you're talking about an edge or a corner or a wide receiver, a offensive tackle, those sort of prime positions. If there's a player there in the late 3rd round, it's because either they don't meet the size requirements for the NFL, or they're not prototype there, they're not prototype athlete there, or they went to a small school. So it's gonna be one of those things, and so that's why Saldiveri, I think, is more likely. If he played it at Texas A&M, he probably would go much higher with everything he's put together, his whole resume. But Old Dominion, maybe you just don't trust the tape as much because there's a bigger jump. And so there's going to be some reason a player's there late 3rd at one of those positions. And it's one of those things usually.
I think with receiver and corner, I think you could find guys like in that round, because a lot of times, depending on the scheme that they came from, it could have like hid some of the things that they can do. And another coach might identify a strength of his and how they would utilize that. So I think that's why you see mid-round guys at receiver and corner do very well. But when you're an offensive tackle or an edge rusher, it's like you're either good or you're not. Or you either have the length and stuff or you don't. And those things really hurt those guys at the NFL level. So that's why, 2nd round pick, you'll see some edges. But if you just rattle off the top edge rushers in the NFL, they are all drafted high. You can't, for receivers, it's like, Devontae Adams, 2nd round pick. Tyreek Hill, 4th, 5th round pick? He had some off the field things going on. But Stephon Diggs, 5th round pick out of Maryland? Like receivers and corners, you can find some of these guys later. But it's really hard at some of these other positions.
I remember Stephon Diggs. I remember that draft class, and I didn't watch Stephon Diggs because I did a lot of work on that draft class, especially at wide receivers. And I didn't watch Stephon Diggs because he was hurt. So he kind of snuck through because he was hurt throughout the whole process. And I think that, so there's always like some reason with a lot of these positions. Wide receiver, there's just so many receivers, and you can, there's different sizes and shapes, and there's a lot more reasons there. But particularly offensive tackle, edge, those are really hard to find late 3rd that don't have some kind of a reason that they're available. Usually it's size, speed, or they're a small school guy.
We didn't really touch a whole lot on the running back position, but that's a hard no, right? And we went to. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
So remember they got my guy Jon Snow, and he's out in the middle of the battlefield, right? And everybody's rushing at him. And I felt like that was us after the Ty Davis Price pick. And I think for a lot of people, it's like, oh nah, like he's this, he's that, and it's like, dude, he can be good. Don't take a back there. Just don't do it.
And like, if you're going to take it back and be like, oh, this really special player fell here, there's no way you could pass on him. It's like Ty Davis Price. He's fine. Like, I don't want to badmouth Ty Davis Price, and apologies to TDP or the Davis Price family that might be listening to the podcast. Like, nothing against him, nothing as a prospect. We watched him. We're like, what, dude? What? First of all, why are you drafting a 3rd round running back? And like, this guy is like, he's fine, but you had to make that pick with everything else.
So we're all the way out on this, right? Regardless of who. They say that, well, this is a deeper running back class. This is a very deep running back class.
See, when you said Game of Thrones, what I thought you were going to say is you were going to compare Devon Achane to Tyrion Lannister because of his size as a prospect out of Texas A&M. And that's who Jordan Reed of ESPN mocked to the 49ers late 3rd round here, pick 102. Devon Achane, 5'8.5", 188 pounds. Again, 29-inch arms. He's basically the same exact size, 10 pounds heavier than Trey Hodges-Tomlinson at running back. Very small hands, 8.5-inch hand size. But Croc, what does he have? He got 4.32 speed at the combine. He is fast. The speed shows up on tape, but man, I just can't get behind a running back in round 3. And looking at Devon Achane, he's fast, but I just think he's kind of like a return man in the NFL. Like there's no there's no run through arm tackles for him. He gets hit, and that's the end of his run. And he's fast. He's not a great receiver, but he can give you something out of the backfield, as in a change of pace role. But man, I mean, you're going to draft a guy who might be mostly just a third or mostly just a kick return guy, and maybe a change of pace. He's got speed for sure, but I'm all the way out on this pick.
I think that's the Colts drafted a little running back. Who was that back that they drafted? But he was kind of like that. Hines, right?
Naeem Hines, yeah. Well, he's
Hines.
a lot bigger than Achane, I think. But he's not big.
Yeah.
But even then, he's still bigger. That's was like 5'8", 188 is pretty small. Again, and Achane's going to fall. He's got 4.3 speed, but he's going to fall in the draft because teams are going to be like, no, we don't draft running backs who are 188 pounds that are 5'8". We just don't do it.
Yeah. And what the 49ers supposed to be the team that like don't draft running backs like that, then all of a sudden they just go on a run of, and I know they swung for Joe Williams, but after that it's like, oh, they didn't really draft running backs. Then last 2 drafts, 3rd round picks who you just get zero protection out of.
And by the way, they've already spent one of their 3rd round picks, their original 3rd round pick this year, on Christian McCaffrey. So it is the 3rd straight year.
You got protection out of him.
A 3rd round pick on a running back, technically. So yeah, definitely a no on that one. Into the chat real quick. Viet Ta says, what is Peacock Pro typical size for? I'm 6'4", 225 right now. Basically, I'm converting from wide receiver to tight end is what's happening with my body. So that's what my and I'm getting much slower and older and bad knees. So
I just got all my measurements today. So I am 6'1", 197 pounds, 11% body fat. Not too shabby.
Croc's doing a lot better than I am. My pro comparison right now is Jordan Matthews. Bad knee, converting from wide receiver to tight end. That's my comparison. Croc's pro comparison is Eric Crocker.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yep, that is. I mean, so I was 6'1", 197 in that range playing, but my body fat percentage at 11.4 right now. While I was playing, it was like 7 at the same weight. So that looks drastically different.
RDC says, I need to know who the 49ers picked in the 3rd round of the mock draft, only for them to go late first, so it's moot anyway. Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Yeah, you get really excited about a player, and you're like, oh, yeah, guess what? The league is actually a lot more excited about this player, too, and he goes 50 spots higher. And so that's why it's so hard to scout for pick 99 and beyond for the 49ers right now. So you got to kind of look for some diamonds in the rough and who some of these players might be. And I've seen a lot of names here in the chat, and Croc and I are going to look at a lot more of these names. Real quick, I'm going to run through some of the names here in this 7-round mock from ESPN. And in the 5th round, they went with Cal safety Daniel Scott, who is absolutely on Croc and I's list to watch. And we haven't done enough work on him. So he's going to be a prospect we're going to watch a lot of soon. DJ Johnson, an edge out of Oregon in the 5th. Payne Durham, tight end out of Purdue. So many good tight ends in this class. We're probably have to do multiple just tight end alone episodes because there's so many of those. And probably Crocker have to come up with the tight end big board at some point before the draft here. Some interesting picks here in the 7th round from this mock draft. Andre Iosivas. He was at the Senior Bowl, I believe, out of Princeton. Put on a show at the Combine. Like he's like 6'3", 205 pounds. Ran 4.4 flat, I think it was. I don't have his numbers up in front of me right now, but a specimen out of Princeton, late round pick. I like that. Take a flyer on a guy who's got height, weight, speed, and then a little Elijah Higgins in the 7th round. Out of Stanford, wide receiver that I think would be a tight end conversion type of a player is an interesting one. And late round 7, I like him too. So, some interesting names here.
By the way,
yeah.
I just worked out with a Cal basketball player who the 49ers invited to their, they do their own little pro day thing or combine.
The local pro day? Yeah.
Yeah. So he was a Cal basketball player, never played football, but he's going to be working out for the 49ers as a tight end.
Is his name Antonio Gates Jr.?
Tony Gonzalez Jr.
Okay.
Got the Cal background going.
Yeah, you got to go Cal with that one. That's right. Yeah. I like it, man. I like it. What's his name?
No, you know what? That's a great question. I got his name, but I only met him that one time. So, you know, it's like, and we working out side by side. We push each other. Big kid, soft hands, all that. So
there we go. All right. I like it. Yeah, bring the young man to camp. I like those basketball players playing tight end. The Niners are in the tight end market for sure. So I see all the names in the chat. We're going to get to a lot more prospects, break them all down, a lot more tight end prospects as well, because I feel like that's the most common position group I'm seeing now. Everyone's got a different favorite too. And oh yeah, Isaiah McGuire. He's the is he the edge from Ohio State? That's another one I'm interested to get into. I've watched a little bit of him recently. Our guy Jordan Elliott turned me on to him, and he was in a mock draft I saw recently, a 3-round mock. So I'm going to watch some of him. I think he might be a really good fit for the 49ers if he's there late third. It's a big question when it comes to all of these.
Okay.
Thank you so much to everybody for jumping into the live chat. You got it?
I found the kid.
Okay.
So Andre Kelly, forward. He's from Stockton. Went to Lincoln High School. Listed at 6'9", 255.
I'm in. And in basketball terms, 6'9", 255 means you're 6'6.5", right?
I think he's closer to 6'6.5" than he is to 6'9".
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. But that's perfect.
Could easily be 6'7". Could easily be 6'7". Yeah.
Yeah. 6'7", 250. Boom. There you go. I mean, ideal. I love it. So Andre Kelly, local pro day. Love it. Love the scoop from Croc. I'll be watching some of him. I'm just gonna watch some basketball highlights and watch those soft hands and do some scouting there. All right. Thanks everybody for jumping in the live chat. Thanks everybody for listening to us on your way to work Friday or over the weekend. Have a great weekend. Croc and I back Monday right here. Locked On 49ers.